Hi, Period 4B. This is Ms. Parker. It's Friday, October 27th, and here is your geometry lesson for today. So we're working on the quadrilaterals unit. This is our quadrilateral family tree. Okay, we will study all 7 of these quadrilaterals. Right now we're focusing on the parallelogram. And you should know that there are 5 properties of a parallelogram. Both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Opposite angles are congruent. The consecutive angles are supplementary, and the diagonals bisect each other. So if you can turn to page 6 in your practice section. Just a reminder that page 5 was finished for homework. If you have not done that, make sure that does get finished. Okay? So we'll read here together. It says, for each method below, you will investigate whether or not the given information is enough to prove that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So our goal today is, how do we determine if something is a parallelogram or if it's just a general quadrilateral? So we want to remember, according to the definition of a parallelogram must have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. Please make sure that you're taking the notes on your paper as I do it here. So we're going to look at different conditions that are given to us and shown here in the image, and we want to identify whether or not that's a parallelogram. We'll do a couple together, and you'll do a couple on your own, and then we'll meet back together. So let's start with number 1. This quadrilateral has 1 pair of opposite sides that is congruent. Segment AB is 5 centimeters, segment DC is 5 centimeters. So what we're trying to identify is that enough to give us a parallelogram? Well, if opposite sides here are parallel, then this is a parallelogram. But we can see that the slope of segment AB is 0. That's a horizontal line. And the slope of the opposite side, DC, that slope is -4/3. So the opposite sides are not parallel. Therefore, that is not a parallelogram. Let's look at the second one together. So here we have a quadrilateral, 4 sides, and both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Last time it was just 1. This time we have both pairs congruent. So we want to know, is this enough to show that I have a parallelogram? Well, according to our definition, if both pairs of opposite sides are parallel, then I do have a parallelogram. So I need to find the slope of AB. That's a horizontal line. That slope is 0. The slope of segment DC, that's a horizontal line. That slope is 0. So segment AB is parallel to segment CD. That's 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel. I need to have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel to have a parallelogram. So I'm going to find the slope of segment AD. I'm going down 4/1, so -4. Remember, the slope is rise over run. And the slope of BC, down 4/1, is also -4. So the segment AD is parallel to the segment BC. Since I have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, this is a parallelogram. And so I just want to recap what we found. We have found that if both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, then yes, indeed, we will have a parallelogram. What I want you to do is go through number 3, look at the given condition, look at the picture, and identify if that's a parallelogram. So you're asking yourself, are both pairs of opposite sides parallel? Then you're going to do the same for number 4, and on the back, you're going to do it for 5, 6, and 7. So press pause. Really, you're going to press pause, and you're going to answer 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Press pause now. Really press pause. Okay, so you should be back, and you should have found that if 1 pair of opposite sides is parallel and the other is congruent, no, that is not going to give us a parallelogram. Okay. On number 4, if 1 pair of opposite sides is both parallel and congruent, yes, that will give us a parallelogram. On number 5, you should have found here that if 1 pair of opposite angles is congruent, that is not enough to guarantee you have a parallelogram. But if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, that is enough to tell us that we have a parallelogram. On number 7, if the diagonals bisect each other, then yes, that is enough to show us I have a parallelogram because the opposite sides are parallel. So we have 5 different ways that we can show that we have a parallelogram. So we'll number them 1 through 5. And we'll fill in the blanks here. So if both pairs of opposite sides are parallel, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. If both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. If both, and pause if you need to, okay? So if you're still copying, you can press pause and then pick up in a minute. If both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. If the diagonals bisect each other, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. And the 5th one, I'm going to put a star because that one is the only one that is a little bit different than what we have in our basic properties. And this one says if one pair, just one pair of opposite sides is both parallel and congruent, here's my symbol for congruent, then that quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So if you are looking at a quadrilateral and one pair of opposite sides is both congruent and parallel, that is a parallelogram. Okay, please make sure you have those in your notes. And when you're ready, we'll do some examples. Okay. Here are the examples. We have 5 different images. It says determine whether each quadrilateral is a parallelogram and write the letter that corresponds to the correct reason. Okay, so we're looking at each picture here and identifying if that is a parallelogram, yes or no, and whether then we want the reason for that. So if we take a look at number 1, I see the 2 arrows here. That means the top and the bottom are parallel. Then I see that I have a 20-degree angle here and a 20-degree angle here. Those are alternate interior angles, and when they're congruent, we must have had parallel lines. So I can determine that the left and right side are parallel. Therefore, I have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. And so, yes, this is a parallelogram. So I'm going to choose E for that one. On number 2, this is not showing that my diagonals bisect each other. So this is not a parallelogram. In number 3, these markings are showing that my diagonals bisect each other. So that one is, I've done A, I've done E, that one is B. Yes, the diagonals are bisecting each other, therefore it is a parallelogram. Okay, number 4, these are measurements of the sides. So the top and bottom are congruent because they're both 31 units. The left and right are congruent, they're both 15 units. Therefore, both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, and therefore this is a parallelogram. Okay. Process of elimination here. On number 5, we have one pair of sides that is parallel, and that same pair is also congruent. They're both 18 units long. So since one pair of opposite sides is parallel and congruent, yes, that is a parallelogram. You have the rest of class to study for your quiz on Tuesday. The quiz on Tuesday is all about parallelograms. You will need to know your 5 properties of parallelograms and how to apply them. Okay? So you need to make sure you study your properties. Those properties can be found on page 4. You also have your flashcards you can study with. Nice. You also have your flashcards you can study with. You're going to also complete page 7. That's a great review. Okay, that'll prepare you. And then if you haven't finished anything on page 5, make sure that gets done as well. So you're taking the rest of class today to study your properties, complete page 7, and make sure page 5 is finished. Anything not done in class is homework, and you have a quiz on Tuesday. Be awesome, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.